Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here. I am going to try to explain in my own words what the Chinese shadow banking system is all about and why it's such a big problem now that the Chinese economy is starting to roll over. In the good years, it wasn't a problem. It actually improved. The shadow banking system in China actually improved the Chinese economy. And I'm going to tell you the reasons why. It's a $9 trillion shadow banking system in China. And it basically runs like this. They open up these banks that are they look like a real bank. And sometimes they're like affiliated with another bank or something. They have some sort of an affiliation. But believe me, the regular banks make sure that affiliation is not going to carry them down too. It's like a separation. They put like a firewall in there so that the real big bank, a legitimate bank's not going to get carried down if the shadow bank goes down. But they make it so that they use a lot of advertisements, a lot of billboards and stuff to make themselves look so legitimate as a big banking institution. This is what they do. And what they offer, the Chinese. Now, you have to remember the background to this. The Chinese people made a lot of money. A lot of them are factory owners. They ship products to America, and they're hard-working people. I mean, they work 18 hours in a day, and they strive and struggle to move their way up through Chinese society, and they're able to save and accumulate money. And their whole family might work together in the family-owned business or whatever, accumulating money, and now they've got a big chunk of savings. But they're within China. Now, what to invest in? So they don't decide to invest in real estate. All of a sudden, this product comes along called a wealth management product. That's a product of this shadow banking system. And because it has such high yields, getting up near 10% per year yields, it looks very tempting because it's about 3 times the yield they would get anywhere else. So they check into it and they find out it's a legitimate looking bank. It's like whatever, Shaolin Bang Bang Bank, whatever they name it, And they see billboards for it all over town. It's got like 2 offices, one on either side of town, and it's got secretaries in there and everything, and delightful music playing, and they watch TV and they see commercials for this bank. It shows a big rising sun, and it shows maybe children playing in the sunshine and say, invest your future savings in Shaolin Jiangdong Bank, And so they're very impressed. And they see projects, high-rise buildings being built with big signs on them saying, Shaolin Jiangdong Bank, Of course, I'm just making that name up, but this is similar to what's going on. And so they say, well, we're going to get 3 times. He says, honey, and I mean, he's built a factory, and he's got a lot of money now. He's got like $3 million, and saved up and everything because his whole family's worked hard. And he says, if we buy this wealth management product, we can make 3 times the interest that we would normally make. So a lot of Chinese bought into this to the tune of $9,000 billion worth. They've bought into this shadow banking system. So that's the investor side of this, what I'm going to call a scheme. So I'm going to call it a scheme. That's the investor side. Now there's the other side, the lending side of the shadow bank system. And this is where they do these projects like say some community wants to borrow money, in China to build a bridge that they didn't have before. And they need like 3 million yuan. So they go to this shadow bank, and the shadow bank, is just right on to lend them the money. Sure. So the shadow bank lends money out to these companies. Maybe a construction company decides to build a high-rise, and they need money, so they go to the shadow bank. Sure, we lend you the money. So on that end, the lending end, they're lending money to almost any Chinese firm that needs it, And then what they're doing is by lending this money out, they're starting these construction projects and bridge building projects and all these projects. What they do is then they take these lendings that they've lended out to these different, and they count that as credit to this new Shaolin Bing Bang Bank. You know? They count that as credit on their books. And then they package them together, these loans, where they've loaned out through China for this project or this community and that community, to this coal company or this manufacturing company and so on. And they grow. They grow because they're lending this money out through the power of fractional reserve lending, and also the money that they're receiving through selling these wealth management products on the other side. So it's a giant operation. It becomes a big bank, a giant operation with two sides to it. One side that's lending money out, repackaging it into these wealth management products that they're selling to the other side, who's buying these wealth management products. Okay? This is how it works. But it's not directly connected to the real banking system. That's why it's called a shadow banking system. And all of this is well and fine as long as they're finding new suckers coming in from both sides. And they keep repackaging all these loans together. But what happens when the economy turns downwards and these ones who have borrowed money can't afford to pay it back, and the shadow bank is not growing anymore, there's not new suckers coming in every which way because the economy's turned down? What happens when the economy in general over a large area in China starts to turn down? So then what happens is they're not repackaging out these new loans. Some of these loans that they made in the past are starting to become non-performing. They've got to come up with that interest that they got to pay these wealth management products on the other side of all of this. Okay? What's happening is these shadow banks are starting to go down. They're starting to fail, some of them. The first ones are starting to fail. But there's thousands of them! The first ones are starting to fail. The government's coming in, and the Chinese People Bank of China's coming in, rescuing some of them, propping them back up and stuff, you know. But that's just the initial is starting to go. In other words, it's like the Titanic hasn't sank yet, but it's starting to list a little bit, and little things are starting to go on, right? Okay? But there's don't forget, there's $9 trillion in this shadow banking system in China. And you have any idea how an enormous amount of money that is to the Chinese economy? Not to mention, the regular Chinese banking system now is running into trouble too. So what we have is a Chinese government that's fighting a tremendous slowdown that's going on in China in factory production and everything else, along with banks that are starting to fail one by one in the regular banking institutions, and these shadow banks are starting to slip on the other side. And then they got the Chinese real estate market, where they've built these big high-rise buildings and everything, and they've sold every apartment inside. In fact, during the good years, people were so excited they wanted to make investments in these real estate projects. They bought these apartments, and some of them were not even finished. They put the apartment high-rise up out in a farmer's field someplace. They put it up quick. When the construction workers put it up, they used things like bamboo to put into the cement and cardboard and everything else that they could think of to try to make the cement go further, you know. And the building's like 30 stories high, and it might have 5 apartments on each floor. And if you went inside it right now, you'd see water dripping from the ceiling. You'd see no flooring laid, no plumbing hooked up, no electrical wires sticking out of the wall with no sockets on them. You would see animals probably running around inside there on bare cement. You know, it's out in the middle of a farmer's field. There's no pavement even leading up to the building, but every apartment in there is sold at an exorbitantly high price, unbelievably high price, like $1 million for each apartment on each floor. And they're just sitting there empty. And it's not just one building that I'm talking about. It's buildings as far as the eye can see that were built in the good years. And these are all become investments in the real estate market, which is still, the bubble hasn't quite pricked on that yet either. So now, put all this together for you guys. You guys are starting to see the picture of China and what's going to happen in the early part. We've already seen a huge drop in their GDP, gross domestic product. The numbers are going to come in from China in the first part of this year coming up. And I'm anticipating absolutely abysmal numbers. Plus, I'm anticipating that the shadow banking system, along with the real estate and the regular banking system, are going to be getting into trouble in the first part of next year. We haven't really, this whole thing with the markets and everything else and what's going on in the world's financial situation hasn't really come to a head yet and burst. And the reason why is we haven't really had a catalyst or a trigger like we did back in 2008. We haven't seen that yet. So what we have is we have an enormous balloon that's filled full of air so tight it's ready to pop, but there's no pin yet. Deutsche Bank's a pin. Just talking about Deutsche Bank for a minute. Deutsche Bank is a pin. But what they're doing right now, as fast as they can, they're not letting Deutsche Bank go down. They're buying enough shares. I don't know who. I'm not going to put a name on it, but they're keeping the Deutsche Bank share price at a level of about maybe $7 or $8, you know. And they're just keeping them going while they're deleveraging that bank as fast as they possibly can, trying to get it down to a manageable size so that when it goes under, it's not going to carry down the world's financial system. They are deleveraging that bank as fast as they possibly can right now. And this is what all this downsizing is about. That's deleveraging Deutsche Bank. They're trying to get Deutsche Bank down manageable. But, you know, all of this is going to come to a head at the same time. It's actually a frightening situation because it's going to be so much larger than what happened in 2008. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. And we'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.